We shall fight, ballpoint pen users, on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields. We shall fight in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Especially not when doing a fountain pen shootout. And today we're going to have a look at two pens, two large pens. I was requested to do a shootout between the two. I had in fact considered doing one of these, but I wasn't sure whether it would be interesting, and as one person asked about it, at least one person is interested, so that warrants a shootout. Today we'll be comparing the Montblanc 149, the Meisterstück, to the Dolcevita Oversize. Two large pens, two serious pens, two expensive pens, and also two pens that write quite well. These are not small pens. These are not nice pens you just take with you wherever you go. Here you have a Dolcevita, here you have a Noodler's piston filler, nib creeper, flex pen. So, I mean, this is a serious pen, and the same goes for the 149. I have separate reviews of these pens on my channel, so if you want to have a more in-depth look, then you can check those out. Today I'll do a basic comparison. I will show you how both of the pens write. I will not show you how to take them apart, because it's very difficult. One thing I can say is that with the Dolcevita, if you really want to, you can remove the nib and the feed by pulling. It is friction fit, but it is a very tight fit. I'm not sure whether this is an ebonite feed. It looks a little bit like it. I've done it once because I wanted to adjust the ink flow a little bit. I wouldn't go there unless it's really necessary, because I've got the feeling this feed, it's quite thin, as you can see. It's not a very thick, wide feed. I've got the feeling it might well snap at some point, so please be careful. The 149 is very difficult. You cannot really take it apart unless you have the tools to do so, which I don't. You got the 146. Someone recently pointed out you can actually unscrew the nib in and feed in there. That's right, but I couldn't do it with this pen. You don't want to damage it. Don't fool around with it. If you've got any stuff, send it to Montblanc or send it to I don't know, some pen repairman who does Montblanc stuff. Okay, let's compare the two. The 149 is the biggest pen in the Meisterstück range. It's a serious piston filler. I mean, these pens, they're really no joke. They're big. You know about my hands. Well, this is a serious pen. I think it's about the same diameter as my little finger, so that's a serious pen. Piston-filled pen, which means you just pull the piston. Twist. I have a bit of a cold. You turn the piston turning knob. The piston moves up and down, draws up ink, and because this is such a big barrel, it holds a lot of ink. I do quite a bit of writing, and when I fill this up, I can write usually for a couple of weeks before having to refill it again. Now, of course, that the mileage may vary a little bit on how much writing you do, how big your handwriting is, what paper you use, etc. All I'm saying is this is a lot of ink. I haven't measured how much exactly. You know what? Let's do that right now. Just an idea. Here I've got one of those little ink vials. I've just inked up the pen. I wrote with it a little bit. I'll see if I can fill it up completely. Because I, of course, did get some ink out with writing. That should be full. Let's see how many milliliters of ink. I'm not doing this on camera, sorry. I'm afraid I'll be spilling a lot of ink. But believe me, I'm just emptying the pen. There we go. So what we have here, unfortunately now I can no longer read. Ah yes, we have more than a milliliter of ink, which may not sound like a lot. I would say it's about 1.2, 1.3. I haven't adequately measured it. Something like that. I can tell you that's a lot of ink. It may not sound like a lot of ink, but it's quite impressive. I think a converter holds about 0.8 milliliters of ink, so this is quite a bit. Okay, now in theory I could do the same thing with my Dolcevita, but that is an eyedropper, um, which I've been using for a bit. But you know what? I'll just grab an eyedropper, make sure the pen is full of ink, and then I'll do the other measurement. There we go. So because this is an eyedropper filled pen, you just fill up the entire barrel. Now that's a big barrel, and I think actually the reservoir goes pretty much all the way down. So you can imagine, I mean, this is really wide girth. So this is a lot of ink. Let's put that into the ink vial. There may have been 1 or 2 drops in from the leftover from the 149, but I'm sure you'll understand that it's not going to amount to a whole lot. The markings. I think this is almost 6 milliliters of ink. Now that's an insane amount. Okay, put that away. Let's discuss the 2 pens in a little bit more detail. The 149 is the flagship of Montblanc. It's a very expensive pen, that's why I got it pre-owned. It's large, it's big, it's not particularly heavy because it's precious resin. So it's not metal. The only metal parts are actually, I think, in the piston, the housing unit, and of course the nib. It's a large nib. It's a very nice nib, 18 karat gold. You know I can't really do close-ups with the camera, but it's a 2-tone nib, very nice. Has a nice bit of spring to it. I got the double broad nib, which is serious nibbage, I can tell you, and gives a pretty wide line. And it's overall it's quite nice. If you have small hands, forget about it. Posted, as you can see, this pen is huge, and the diameter is pretty large too. I don't happen to have a caliper gauge at hand. I'll just take a ruler. I'd say that's about 13 millimeters diameter. So that's, I mean, that's serious. Apart from that, I think it's a beautiful pen. Has a nice ink window. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it's useful to see how much ink is left in the pen. It feels balanced, even when posted, because the cap is also precious resin. It's not very heavy. You post it, and it's nice. Pretty nice, well balanced, nice to use. Writing performance is okay. Well, more than okay. It's a very smooth nib. Mine skips a little. I'm not sure whether that is the case in all 149s. I've only used this. I think it's just mine. As I said, I got it pre-owned. Maybe it has to adjust to my hand a little bit. I'm not really sure, but you know, it's not a huge issue. Depends a little on the paper, the ink, etc. 149. Then we have the Dolcevita Oversize. Very large pen. In size, I mean, as in length, I think it is just a little bit smaller than the 149. The difference is very small, maybe a millimeter or 2, but that's it. The nibs are both large, serious nibs. I think the Dolcevita, let me just take that ruler out again. Yeah, I think this is about 14 millimeters, so it's just a little bit more. Now you may think 1 millimeter isn't a lot. Well, I can tell you this is one thick pen to hold. I mean, it's really large. When you post this, it turns just huge. This really is. I'm sorry I stress this a lot, but if you've never used this, it may be difficult to imagine how big it is. Holding it, trying to grasp it, it's so big that I find it tiresome to use for long writing sessions. I can't use it posted for a long time. I use it unposted, then it's a pretty decent size. It's not so much the length, it's the girth that really matters with this pen. And when you post it, I think it gets a little top heavy. The pen, this is silver, so it actually weighs something. The cap itself is not particularly heavy, but because it doesn't post very deeply, it just sticks out and it's heavy. This has a sorry, as I said, I have a cold. I'm sniffing and coughing a bit. Sorry. This is a fantastic nib. I took it out once. I made it a little wetter. It's a gusher now. I absolutely love it. This is, if I'm not, yes, this is 14K. I want to say 14K. I'm just taking a loop to make sure I'm not lying here. Yep, 14K. It has some flex to it. Maybe I should say springiness. It's not a full flex pen. Don't expect vintage flex or anything, but it will definitely give you some line variation. The same goes for the 149. So if that's what you're looking for, then both of these pens will deliver. Montblanc, we all know it's so prestigious and blah blah blah. So if you're really looking for a pen that will impress people, and I guess this is it. I think this one is just a little bit nicer. It has a bit more color, looks a little bit nicer. It has some issues. Some people don't like the fact that it says Delta Dolcevita very large on the back of the cap on the other side of the clip. The Montblanc is a bit more neutral in that regard, so if that matters to you, you may pick the Montblanc. Two excellent pens. It's very difficult to pick a favorite. If I would say this one. Although, of course, it's an eyedropper, a little bit more hassle to fill it up, whereas this is just a piston filler. This will hold a lot more ink. So if you need a huge writing capacity, here you go. And that's all there's to it. By the way, you can actually fit in a converter in here. Standard international converters will fit, which is useful if you want to use that. That was a lot of talking. I hope I haven't bored you to death. I think it's much more interesting to show you a writing sample. As I said, in this shootout, I won't show you how to take the pens apart because that's very difficult and I wouldn't recommend doing it. That's all there's to it. So I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Okay, serious pens for serious people. Delta Dolcevita. I'm just going to use shorthand here because it's such a long name. Delta Dolcevita Oversize, formerly. And Montblanc Meisterstück 149 in double broad. Notice the difference in ink saturation. This is Ackermann Trèfle Turquoise. This is the same ink. This is not a particularly dry pen, but this is super wet. The ink is still not dry at this point. I love that. That is a gusher, and it makes the ink very dark and very saturated. Do a bit of writing. My 149 is a little prone to skipping, I should warn you. I'm not saying that's an issue with all 149s. It may well be just my pen. May have to send it off to a nib meister or something. Right now it seems to be doing fine, so that's good. I mean, I don't want to give the impression that it's a bad pen. Obviously it's not. The quick round fox, a bit of line variation. That is line variation. See, there we got a skip. That is serious line variation. I don't think the Delta can do that. I don't think it can go that far. Well, it's not bad. So that is a lot of ink. Fast writing. This is the most illegible I've written up to this point in all my reviews, I think. I already told you the 149 is a little more prone to skipping, but it's not that bad in this review, so I'm glad about that. Looks nice, I think. Both pens keep up well, so that's very, very good. I think I've covered what I needed to cover. Maybe a little bit, I always call that coloring. As you can see, it's a fairly nice even patch of ink, quite wet, although this bit is already dry. I'm willing to bet that is not going to happen with the Dolcevita. This is just like taking a bucket of ink and throwing it on the page. It's that wet. See that? Wow, that's just crazy. Same thing there. This is really a really wet pen. So if that's what you're looking for, here it is. Two beautiful pens, two very expensive pens. Both will do well in impressing people, if that's what you're looking for. Both will write well. Both are very big, hold a lot of ink. So, yeah, there you have it. You really have to make a choice for yourself. I love them both. If I have to pick one right now, I'd pick this one. I think this is a more fascinating pen. It writes, to my mind, it writes a little bit nicer than the 149, but again, I'll probably have to get this tuned by Nipmeister, and then I may well reverse my thoughts. So there you have it. I hope the shootout was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.